of the great sights. If you didn't know better, you'd say, what year is this? Is this the 1970s? Could be. I'll grow my mustache back if that's the case. You are looking at one of the great race drivers of all times, and he'll sit here with us all day, Mark Allen, and deny it. But Chip Hanauer, truly one of the all-time greats, and he gets to sit at the controls, at the wheel of the refurbished Blue Blaster, the Miss Atlas van lines that unfortunately took to life in an accident in Mexico of the great Bill Muncey. But what a wonderful day it is when these old boats can come out and drive.
Hydroplane and Raceboat Museum spent 4 years refurbishing this, and a shout out to those guys. Don Mock, who was with the museum, he's one of the volunteers, was the crew chief on this restoration. This is one of the restorations. They have some replicas too, but Chip is having a great time running Bill Muncey's Blue Blaster. And there you see the nemesis, the juggernaut they called it, the 1980 Miss Budweiser. And these two boats had a couple of years where they actually raced together. The Blue Blaster was one of the more successful of the early cab-overs, and its life was really about 4 years old. It raced for 5. It had great success. In fact, it won this race 4 years in a row, 77, 78, 79, and 80. But by 1980, when the Miss Budweiser Griffin came on the scene, the Blue Blaster was kind of starting to be a little bit older and not as competitive.
I want to point out a couple of differences. For all of you who have been around these parts for a long time, you know this. But we have so many people in this area who are new to this sport and who are saying, what's the big deal about hydroplanes? Well, first of all, listen. Do you hear the difference? Today's boats are driven by turbine engines. They're helicopter engines. This was the old. These were what? Allisons or no?
Rolls Merlin in the Atlas, and a Griffin, which was actually one of the British bomber engines. The Rolls Merlin was a British Spitfire fighter engine.
But piston-driven engines. Yeah. That's why the noise, and that's what one of the big differences has become. But they could still, these boats, achieve great speeds, and just look at that.
Chip with his hand up just a second ago. His hand up is waving to everybody along the log boom. And David Williams is in the Budweiser, and he's lagging back a little bit so the folks on the log boom could see Chip as well, because he's inside. Don't want to cover him up with the rooster tail.
Now Chip obviously raced competitively. He's won 60 races, won championships and gold cups and all the rest. And Dave William runs the Raceboat Museum. But how much fun is it for both these guys to be in these boats today?
Oh, it's tremendous fun. They love doing this. You know, they also restored the 82 Atlas van lines, which was the boat that replaced the Blue Blaster, which was Chip's first Atlas ride. And we've seen them several times, and they have a great time going out. In fact, they'll stand on the dock afterwards and just chat about what they did out there.
As I was talking to Chip about these boats, the skid fin, which is on that left side of the sponsor, dip down in the water, hold that boat in close to the corner. Smaller than the ones on today's boats.
Definitely, right? Yes. Quite a bit smaller. Yeah. They're probably 2-3 feet deep and not as wide. The current skid fins are at least 3 times that.
Right.
So you have a bigger hole for the new boats, but these guys are, you know, you're probably going about right there. They're going about 115, 120 miles an hour.
Another big difference, as you see, the canopy not present on these boats. The driver sat up. You could see his head bouncing around in the boat, and you know, in some ways, the older boats were so much more dangerous. We saw a number of drivers lose their lives, both here and in other locations, especially when boats went over, because the idea was don't belt yourself in, get yourself free of the boat if you needed to. But obviously these guys are not going to let that happen, and it's just a great shot from Chopper 7 looking down and seeing these two wonderful vintage boats.
Just listen to the thunder. That's why they call them thunder boats.
Exactly. Who sat in that chair for 25 years with us here, and now Mark, you're sitting there. But he always used to say he could hear that sound when he was in school up here in the neighborhood.
Right.
And he'd come running down the hill to see the boats practicing. And my guess is you probably heard a little of that yourself.
I did too. I didn't live that close, but we'd be down here, and I've been known to come down when just one boat was testing and stand and watch. It gets in your blood, Steve. It really does. And to hear the thunder, to see these boats, this is just a real thrill to see what the Hydroplane and Raceboat Museum has done, putting in thousands of hours to restore Bill Muncey's Blue Blaster. He called this his office. The Blue Blaster was his office.
It really was, as I talked to a number of crew members and folks that I knew down in the pits yesterday, when Chip drove this boat on Friday, from what I understand, there was barely a dry eye in the pits.
Yeah, yeah. Wouldn't have expected anything else.
Yeah.
The team is all down there in their Atlas Van Lines driving crew suits, just exactly like the old days when this boat was competitive and racing. Same thing happened when the Slow-Mo 4 made its debut back here on the lake.
And they have a number of boats at the Race Museum that they can bring out and put on the water. I've been in the Miss Thriftway, I believe. So there are a number of boats that they have refurbished. It is a spectacular place. If you've never had the opportunity, go down to Kent. It's located on South 196th Street in Kent, the Raceboat Museum, and you will see what the history of this sport here is all about.
Looks like Chip may be deciding to come back into the pits. He's cut into the infield and done a circle here. David Williams has gone around the outside of the race course, but Chip, I think, is coming back into the pits after what I'm sure they'll be the biggest grin on his face that you have ever seen.
And as we said from yesterday, they had a little issue there toward the end, and he ended up coming in on the rope. This time he's going to drive it right in. He may, at that speed, he may pull up onto the trailer right from the water.
No, we don't want to see that.
As I'm watching Dave Williams as well as coming over. What a great moment to watch these vintage boats out here. Thank you to Dave Williams and all the folks at the Hydroplane Museum. And great job, Chip. He'll be back up here with us for the championship heat in a little bit.